Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? This is a rehearsal for a speech that I will be giving on the 4th of September in Athens for the International Publishers event. This topic has to do with speaking for young learners. It's something that I've done in the past, but this one is actually, more modernized, and I've included much more information than the previous one that I had done. So, without further ado, allow me to share my screen with you, and away we go. Okay, so here we are. Speaker card, speaking for young learners. Now, I am representing Express Publishing. This PowerPoint is powered by my wonderful publisher. Now, the first question I'm going to ask the audience, can speaking be taught? And if so, at what age? So at this point, you're probably thinking, how easy is it for a young learner to start, using the language, even though he still hasn't learned the alphabet yet? Now, there is a misconception, according to Cheney in 1998, that speaking couldn't be taught at a young age, and that this was a natural evolution of learning grammar and vocabulary, and it comes, naturally afterwards, after you've, gone through a few stages of learning the language. Now, speaking must be fostered at a young age. And of course, we have to stimulate their minds to start the speaking process so as these young learners can adapt to it much more easily and effectively as possible. Having said this, I would also like to add that there's been a lot of research conducted the past 2 decades that have to do with the ability of a student to speak. Now, we're all teachers. We are all fully aware of the fact that it doesn't have to do only with ability or how we deliver our lesson. It also has to do with a psychological element. And researchers have concluded that we have to focus on two elements in order to help us establish the proper speaking environment. The first one has to do with the psychological effects, how comfortable students feel in the classroom. The second factor that we will be examining today has to do with the proper stimulation. Having said this presentation will be split into two categories. We will be delving into the psychological factors of the teacher-student relationship, as well as the student-student relationship. And then we will focus on the educational techniques on how and when to intervene, the proper procedure in order to do it, and of course, the outcome of what we will be doing. Now, let's start off with psychological factors having to do with the relationship that we as teachers have with our students. Now, I'll ask the audience, do you know your students? I know this is a touchy question. I know you love your kids, but do you know them? Because many a time we are so punctual, we enter our classrooms, we start, doing our lessons, but many a time we do not even consider some factors as how our kids are doing, what's going on in their lives, their hobbies. I'm not talking about personal information, but general activities that have to do with the whole at school or anything like that. So there are some things that we should though be aware of. It is up to the principal to inform us of the family background, if there are any problems at home, students with special educational needs. I also received a lot of emails concerning this topic, and I've added something at the end of this presentation. Relationship with classmates, if there's any bullying going on, and this is something we'll be talking about, personal interests, and generally you have to know what's going on in that little mind of theirs. So try to do your research. What kind of hobbies do they have? Because if someone is invested in football and you ask him about football, he'll be more eager to speak because of his interest in the hobby. So you're offering him a motivation, an incentive to do so. And of course, there's so many questions that you can ask and expand upon their activities and their interests. What about celebrities? What kind of music? Who's their favorite singer? Now, after getting to know your students a little better, it would be easy to have, conversation starters. How was ballet yesterday? Did you go dancing? And they'll be eager to answer you in the language that they are learning. Now, let's focus on the student-student relationship. We are aware of this. A student will be terrified. He will not speak if he thinks he's teased or even bullied. Now, I know what you might tell me. Are we psychologists? Are we their parents? Well, I'm not going to say I'm sorry to say this, but we are in effect. both parents and psychologists. We are their third parent. Do you know that statistically, we see these children almost as frequently as their parents do? Because at the end of the day, they finish their lessons at the language school, and then they will go home, probably have supper, and go to bed. Now, we actually see them more than their parents sometimes. So yes, you can say that we're a mother or a father. And the thing is that we must be aware of what's going on. If our students, our children are terrified, or there's something bad going on in the classroom, it's up to us to handle it and inform the parents. Now, there are, of course, other students that are not being bullied, but they're shy and they're fearful of being bullied. So in these cases, we have to establish a very welcoming environment. It's up to us, okay? Because as teachers, we have so many responsibilities. It's part of the job, but we always, live up to the task at hand. Now, if the student-student relationship is something that is blossoming in class and the student feels safe and confident and of course happy, then he will be up to the challenge and start speaking more in class. Now, psychological elements have been proven by researchers to be of the utmost importance, and if you establish a wonderful environment in class, they will actually progress faster when it has to do with language learning and especially speaking and participation. Now, this also, promotes inclusiveness and teamwork in class, which is something we need for projects. Now, can a student, speak without recognizing words? This is a question a lot of people ask me. What do you think? Do you think that a student can speak without even reading? Hmm. Well, if you answered yes, that is correct. Here are some skills that you probably know are receptive and productive. We have the receptive skills like listening and reading. Of course, you also have writing and speaking. Now, as you can see, listening and speaking are connected between them. What does this mean? Well, you can actually speak the words and they will mimic you, okay? And they will respond accordingly, even if they've never seen it in written form. So, yes, you can start off with classroom vocabulary. Shh, be quiet. Okay, come here. Okay, you can use, some verbal communication. And of course, you can move on to polite requests and expressions. For example, thank you, good morning, good afternoon. There's so many things you can teach children, even if they haven't read the word. So the mentality that there used to be that they have to learn grammar and vocabulary first before they speak, this mentality is flawed. They can speak without even reading. And that's why, as publishers, Express Publishing and more publishers as well, we offer visual stimulation, even if it isn't in the form, a written form of words. Now, what about educational techniques? This is what you're probably interested in, and this is where things get really spicy. Now, we are going to start by warming them up. We want them to speak as one voice, as a group. Now, you're probably wondering, what are you saying? Are they going to speak individually? Let's start off as a group. We're going to do an exercise together. And after we finish this exercise, you will see why this exercise is so beneficial to your class. Okay, we'll explain the benefits after the exercise. Now, we will practice with songs as well, and of course, games. Let's start off with speaking as one voice. Repetition in phases. This is the key. We have them pronounce individual words, then we go to group words, then whole sentences. And the whole idea, because this is something a wonderful professor taught me when I was at a younger age, and I've been doing this for 20 years. You set the pace by pointing to yourself, then you point to your students. Allow me to show you. So for this example, we're going to use the sentence, this is a pen. Simple, right? We have CVC words. It's easy. They're not going to be discouraged. Single syllable words are ideal. Keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to start the exercise. I want you to help me. I will speak first and I will point to myself. Then I want you, the audience, to speak when I point to you. Let's start. First repetition. This. Now I'm going to point to you. I want everyone together to say this. This. Okay. So since I'm speaking to the computer, I'm also doing the audience. Is is a pen. Pen. Now, even though this sounds ridiculous, it's one of the best teaching techniques that you can use to promote speaking in class. Let's go to the second repetition, and afterwards we'll see why it's important. This is, okay, a pen. And of course, the audience reacts as well. As for the third repetition, we speak the whole sentence. This is a pen. Let me hear the audience. This is a pen. Wonderful. Now, at this point, what did we actually achieve? Students feel more confident as a group and build self-esteem. Now, this is the funny part. If you ask a student to speak for himself in class, especially at the beginning of his career as a student, okay, they are terrified, but their individual voice is kind of, lost within the group. They think that we can't hear them, but we're teachers, we're capable of everything. So we actually know who's speaking and who isn't. And they find it way more comfortable to speak in a group than on their own. After doing this in a group, then you can ask them to do it individually because it's already boosted their self-confidence. Now, we do the same technique when introducing the new vocabulary words. For example, let's say we have a unit about action words. Fly, fly, run, run, jump, jump, hop, hop. They hear my pronunciation, my intonation, my accent as well. They try to mimic it. It's way better for them, to have the time to process the information. Now, let's go to another technique, and we're going to come back to the one that we just did a few moments ago. Let's practice with songs. Now, we're not going to sing a song today, but you have to encourage your students to sing, and it would be a good idea to participate. But we don't want our voice to be stronger than theirs. Okay, we'll sing, but we want them to be the leaders. All right, you can play the song again and split your class in groups. They can sing a specific verse, have a little competition. They love this. Okay, now let's move on. What about games? I love games, e-games, or as we call them, whiteboard games. When you have a game, most children want to take part in it. It's in English, of course. They will desperately try to find the words because they're enthusiastic, they're happy, they want to take part, and of course, they'll give their best to do so because they don't see this as a task that they have to do. They don't think that they're being assessed. They are being assessed, okay? But they see this as a game. For example, if you look at number 13 here, uh, it says, what's this? It's a cat, okay? And because it's a CVC word, it's one of the first words they learn, they'll be excited. They want to share the fact that they know the word and they know how to speak English. It's a cat, okay? Now, there's so many varieties in games that you can use, and please, the publishers know what they're doing. They provide you with a lot of games in their whiteboard material. Use them, they're entertaining, educational, and they blow off steam. Now, since we mentioned playing games with interactive whiteboard software, you have to make sure that every student has the chance to answer them. That's very important. We want equal opportunities for everyone. Of course, as they answer everything correctly, it will boost their morale, and this is what we want. We don't want shy students in class. Now, speaking as an individual, we have 3 goals when speaking as individual. Remember the exercise we did before with the repetition, pointing to myself and then to the audience? That was as a group. Now, we want to speak individually with confidence. We want to speak using the correct grammar and syntax, and of course, the proper pronunciation and intonation. I am an oral examiner. I've been examining for 6 universities since 2003. It's almost 20 years now. And on our corrections sheets, when we pass on the marks, we have 2 fields that have to do with pronunciation and intonation. We also examine fluency, but just be careful. Fluency is completely different than being impulsive. We want our students to be fluent, but not impulsive. We'll get to that soon. Let's start off with speaking individually with confidence. How are we going to make our students feel confident? First of all, you have to praise their efforts, even if they make mistakes. They will make mistakes. You know this, you're teachers. I guarantee this as a teacher. They will make mistakes. Okay, but you should still praise them, then correct them. Congrats, Mike. You did a wonderful job. Thanks for trying. Be careful. Okay, you have to say this like this. Now, another thing is that many a time students might make fun of each other. You are in charge of setting the rules in class. You have to make it perfectly clear we do not, never make fun of our classmates. On the other hand, we should encourage them. So a small pat on the back, good job. You have them, applauding in class, and that makes a huge difference during the lesson. Now, when we're speaking individually with confidence, we need to take baby steps. Try not to confuse them. I mean, there's some words in some course books that are admittedly more difficult to pronounce. Words like purple or cucumber. I get a kick out of this. I really love it when my little kids are struggling. They want to pronounce it purple, and they can't, achieve it. It's okay. They're learning a foreign language. It is difficult to struggle with a few syllables and, of course, vowels and consonants. It's okay for them to make a few mistakes. Try not to perfect they're speaking with the few difficult words that they encounter. So a secret is to use simple sentences, a subject, a verb, and an object. That's it. Jim likes pizza. Simple as that. It's easy for them. They feel more confident and they'll, keep trying to perfect themselves. Now, I mentioned earlier something about fluency and impulsiveness. You should advise them not to hurry. I prefer my students to start out at a slower pace, not to be that fluent, and then gradually work on the fluency. If they think that they're going to impress us teachers by offering us spontaneous answers, answers like yes or no, without even thinking, that's a mistake. Slow them down, ask them to think about it again, and fluency will eventually entail. Now, speaking using the correct grammar and syntax, this is difficult. We have B2 level students, C2 level students that struggle with this. I'm going to share some information with you that's going to help them a lot. First of all, I'm an oral examiner. I mentioned this before. When I prepare my students, I have a tendency when I hear them speak, I catch on, to the mistakes right away. I'm like, why did she say that? But if you let the speaker complete the sentence, you'll be amazed by what the student can produce. Never, ever stop them from speaking until they have finished. If they're corrected while speaking, they lose focus, they panic, and they stop. Now, check this out. I'm going to use an example from a B2 level student, even though this is from young learners, because in a B2 level student, you can understand how important it is not to obscure the other person's thoughts while they are speaking. Check this out. The girl, she is wearing a wonderful pink dress. She is walking in the forest and looks happy. If she hadn't made that one mistake, the she, the pronoun, wouldn't it be a wonderful sentence for a B2 level student with adjectives, okay, very descriptive? If I had stopped her at the third word, she wouldn't have produced this incredible sentence. Let them finish, take notes of the mistakes, then share the mistakes with them after they have finished. And as I said before, set rules in the classroom. Make it perfectly clear that only you, the teacher, will be correcting students during lesson. So I'm going to ask the audience. You ask a student a question, okay? For whatever reason, the student answers, incorrectly. How many of your kids start, correcting the other student in class? Isn't that annoying? It's up to us. It's our fault. We have to set the rules. Explain to them. Never, ever correct your classmates when I ask a question. If the student makes a mistake, I'm completely aware of it. I will correct the student when I think it is suitable. So you have to explain this from the beginning. Set the rules. We are the teachers. It's our responsibility. Now, this is a funny one. I love teaching junior classes. I really do. I had this junior class, and this is, a frequent phenomenon. They always wait for our approval. So when they start uttering their first sentences in class, for example, they want to say their name. They will expect approval for every single word they utter, and they will pause after every word. All of us have had these students. So let's say that you have this sweet little girl with a puppy eyes, and she's trying to say, "My name is Mary." So she starts off by saying, "My," and you're like, "Yes, name." She's looking at us in the eyes. Yes, is. Come on, you can do it. Mary, good job. You did it without breaking yourself. Good job. Okay, so the funny thing is here that they do expect for our approval. Okay, jokes aside, you have to play along, smile, and encourage them. They'll slowly get out of this habit. Okay, trust me. But what you're going to do is, after speaking the whole sentence in stages, ask them to repeat the whole thing without any pauses a second time. Okay, it will help them feel more confident because after they've gotten our approval, okay, for filling out, the whole sentence in stages, afterwards they'll utter it, with no pauses. They'll feel much better. Now, pronunciation and intonation, of course. You know what? I'm sad to say that in Greece, for example, a lot of students fall behind when it has to do with pronunciation, intonation, and fluency. And we have a bad habit of focusing a lot on grammar and vocabulary. And I'm sorry to say that this is not speaking. You do need grammar and vocabulary, but this is not speaking. So it's very important to work on pronunciation. Try to break the words down into sounds and then have them repeat the sounds as a group, then as individuals. Remember the exercise I showed you with the pointing at the beginning? Write the word on the board, split it into parts. Make sure each part has a vowel. So you have this picture, you have, image, vision stimulation, umbrella. You start, you point to your class, bre, bre, la. Then you point to one student and you play the same game, but with one student. And they start, mimicking your pronunciation, your accent, the intonation. This is very important. Try Please try, to allocate some time into doing these exercises with your kids. We are always stressed because our employers ask us to finish, the school syllabus before, the end of the school year. It's difficult to finish 8, 10, 12 units and have to keep our minds on everything because the parents afterwards come and complain to us and they're like, "You didn't finish your school books." And the thing is that we allow parents sometimes to affect us negatively because as teachers, we have to do our best for our kids. We have to focus on pronunciation as well. And having said that, a lot of times we kind of skip the exercise that have to do with pronunciation, which is a pity because they're in the books for a reason. We do need pronunciation exercises. Okay, now we have to practice with words that rhyme. And when we're talking about words that rhyme, check this out. Have them repeat the sounds as a group again, then as individuals. You can have group words of up to 3. For example, bin, pin, tin. It's easier for them to get used to the intonation, the accent, if they're in groups of 3. Proper course books have done this, and they have, gathered and collected, words that is easier for them to learn, especially at this age. What about nursery rhymes, reading books, watching videos? Now, let me share you a funny story. When I have junior classes, I always grab a nursery rhyme, a story, a reader, anything, and I sit on the floor in the middle of the classroom. Okay, we usually try to have a few rugs so it's much more comfortable. And all my kids are sitting around me, and then I start, reading them a story. For example, The Three Little Pigs. I like doing the big bad wolf, and my kids do the pigs. Now, this is the funny part. I start off by saying, "I will huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." And then my kids are like, "Not by the hair on your chinny chin chin. You can't fool us with that old sheepskin." And it's funny. Now, most of my kids don't even understand what they're saying. They don't. They don't understand all of these words like skin or sheepskin. And the thing is that they do repeat what they hear from the story. and they're working on their accent, intonation, punctuation, without them even realizing how the words are written or how they appear visually. And they're having a great time. This is very important at this age. Storytelling, it's one of my fondest moments since I was a child. Please share these wonderful moments with them. So have them role play afterwards. You can have three kids playing the three little pigs. You can have one of the students do, the wolf. They'll try their best to, play out all these stories. And you know what? Since we're talking about, performances and playing out, you can practice through drama and theater. Yes, even if they still have difficulties reading. So where can I find the ELT material for theatrical productions? First of all, ELT course books contain a plethora of ideas and materials to utilize for your own play. For example, the stories at the beginning of each unit. Why don't you play this out in class? Because usually, kids become fond of the characters, they grow accustomed to them, and they can play them out. You're not interested, in the storyboards and the books. What about readers? There are so many readers, and they are easily adaptable. Usually these readers have two, three, four, five characters. Choose the one that suits your class. Have them, do role play. Have them, play it out in such a way that they impersonate the person. Not only, when it has to do with pronunciation and the accent, but, emotionally. And when they do this and invest themselves so much, it's much easier for them to learn how to speak the language. Now, since we're talking about pronunciation, I had a few messages on my blog about contractions. And I remember two, to be exact. They asked me, should we teach kids contractions even before they learn full words? And I'm like, yes, yes, it's a natural element of the language. My name's Rebecca. I'm dancing. We use contractions in every sentence of the English language. We use this on a daily basis. It's part of the language. It's natural. So you have to teach them from the get-go. There's a reason why publishers have so many pages from the first pages of the book that have contractions. If you see on the whiteboard on the left, what's this? It's a rubber. So we already have contractions and they're actually explained in the book. Please use them. Okay, we know what we're doing here, the publishers. Okay, now, common pronunciation mistakes to focus on. There are a few things that you should be careful of. Word stress. For example, there are so many words that are written in the same fashion, but they are pronounced differently. So you have a present, the gift that you give, or you can present, like a presenter does. Whenever you see a word that you know can be pronounced in two ways, please take a small pause, explain it on the board for your kids so that they won't be confused later on and doubt what they're learning. Intonation. Now, this is a game I play with my kids. We love role playing in class. This is something I mentioned earlier. For example, you can, use your puppy eyes and go to the kids and I'm like, okay, let's play a little. Did you clean your room? And your students were like, no, I didn't have time. And then you can, use a different intonation and use facial expressions and have it done in a various emotion. So instead of did you clean your room, you can do did you clean your room? And you have these crazy reactions from your kids. I'm sorry, mom, I'm going to clean it right now because they love role playing. Okay, it's fun and you can have various answers to the same question. It's very important. Now, some other pronunciation mistakes to focus on, mispronouncing heteronyms. You have lead, as in leader, okay, the verb, or you can have lead, the material, the rock. As I mentioned earlier, write the word on the board, explain it can be pronounced in two various ways. The same applies for grammar tenses. You have read, read, read. Okay, and there's so many more that you can focus on because a lot of kids are kind of baffled at first, so it's good to stress the importance of these words that are similar but can be and should be pronounced differently. Now, silent letters, yes, please stress them enough on the board. Cross out the letter and say that we do not pronounce this one. Be very careful. In this example, we have island, Wednesday. Be careful to cross out the letters. And of course, focusing on one way of pronouncing vowels. you have a short vowel, which is a pot, and a long vowel, which is a stove. So try to put the same words in a sentence. There is a pot on the stove. And as I just mentioned, you can focus on one way of pronouncing vowels. A short vowel is like fun, and a long vowel is student. In this picture, the students are having fun. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, do not neglect the pronunciation exercises in your books. This is very important. I don't know how much I'm going to stress this. Okay. Now, one thing that I'd like to stress on before we finish has to do with short exchanges. Can students have a conversation from the get-go? Well, use question words. So you have a speaking exercise, you have your kids. What is your favorite color? Please ask your classmate. So one kid asks the other, what is your favorite color? My favorite color is red. Okay, even if they have, spelling mistakes, still trying to work on learning these words, on how to write them, use question words. Where do you live? Who is your best friend? These are simple sentences. They can hear them and repeat them. Question words. And of course, there's a reason why publishers have these exercises in the books. What color is it? Okay, and you have visual stimulation as well. Now, I received a lot of messages. Thank you so much. And it's really an honor. And you asked me about students with special educational needs. And actually, this has to do mostly with exams, as we are all aware that there are examinations that have to do with very low level students, primary levels. We now have pre-A1 examinations, and students are assessed on their capacity to speak. So what happens with students with special educational needs? The test is tailored to their needs. It's up to us to inform, the parents at the school that if they bring the proper documents, something that can prove that, the child has special educational needs, the exam center will take this into consideration and will tailor the test to the needs as regards time, elements examined, and of course the marking. So please contact the exam center for details and guidelines, because they will guide you and offer you the proper material and support to properly adjust the test to the student's needs. And of course, it's our obligation to do so, because we're teachers. We need and supposed to endorse the best for our kids. Okay, I would like to thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure. May I remind you, this was just a rehearsal for the actual speech that I'm giving on Sunday. I really hope I see you there. Once again, thank you. These are our social media accounts for Express Publishing. You will also find this presentation file, the PowerPoint file, on my blog, katherinereilly.blog, and my email for Express Publishing is katherinereilly@expresspublishing.co.uk. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I hope I see you again soon. Goodbye, everyone.